In this tutorial, we're going to do some basics. So first, let's take a look at the UI. Over here on the left, we've got the project window. These are where you'll store things that can be used between scenes. The best description or analogy I can give it is that this is your easel that you're going to use to paint with. Whereas this scene, this window right here, is the hierarchy. This is where you'll be painting on. That'll all be displayed here in the scene view. So as you add objects here, they'll appear here. This tab hiding behind here is the game window. This will pop up when we press play to play our game. That'll happen automatically. And then over here in this far right window is called the inspector. As you click on objects in your scene, you will see details about that thing over here in the right in the inspector window. And the other thing I want to call your attention to is the Playmaker window down here in the bottom. We don't have anything with the Playmaker script on it yet, but when we do, this will be a window we use a lot. Okay, so let's add some objects to our scene. Since this is going to be a lunar lander kind of game, let's create a rocket. So I'm going to do that first by right-clicking in this window, finding 3D object, and then find a cube. By the way, you can also do that up here under Game Object, 3D Object, Cube. You can also just right-click here in the hierarchy if that's faster for you. So I'm moving around in the scene around this cube by holding down the keys W, A, S, or D. D makes me move right, A left, W forward, and S back. You should try practicing that. It's important to be able to move around objects and to kind of just move around the space. I'm also holding my right mouse key down when I do that. If you just press the D key, nothing happens. But if you hold down your right mouse button and press the D key, you'll spiral around. And I'm just spinning my mouse as I go, sort of like strafing in a video game. Okay, so now when we select the game object, see how it shows up cube over here? We can rename that. We could call this something like rocket part. Okay, so there are these buttons all along the top here. The one we've got selected currently is the move tool. And see how these arrows show up? These arrows let us move it perfectly on a given axis. So like for example, if I want to move it up, just click on the little yellow part and move it up. See, I can only move it up and down as I move my mouse. And then the blue arrow and the red. Now you can grab it in the middle. You can grab it in the middle and move it in any direction you want, but if you want to keep it on an axis, you can do that as well. Now look over here on the right hand side in the inspector. See this part right here? It says transform. Notice what happens when I move the object there on that axis. That number is changing. Well, that's important because we can actually change the numbers directly right there. If we want that to be a very specific place, we can do that. You can also mouse over the X or the Y or Z and these little arrows will appear, and it lets you adjust its position there as well. Okay, let's look at these other ones. This is the rotate tool. When we click on that, these little guidelines show up showing us where we can rotate the object. You can manually drag here right on the lines if you want. You can also drag them over here just like with the move tool. Get it exactly the way you want it. Then there's also the resize tool. This one works similar to how the move tool works, is that you can scale things on the axis. So if you want something to be really long like this, you can just drag there. Or you can go in here to the middle on the white box and then left click and drag in a direction, and it will scale universally in all directions. And that same thing works over here as well. You can just sort of manually type it in if that's what you want. Now I'm going for a rocket kind of shape, and I want this to sort of be the fuselage. So I'm going to make this a little more rectangular. Yeah, and then I'm going to add some other objects. 3D object. Let's do maybe a sphere. And you should just play around adding objects, get a shape you want. This rocket doesn't need to be beautiful. That's not the point. We'll make more beautiful stuff later. The point of this exercise is just to get comfortable, adding and manipulating objects. And so have some fun adding different shapes, resize them, rotate them, however you want. Build your rocket. Let's just do a couple more things here. Also, you can do this thing where you can highlight an object and then you can copy it. Control C on that object and then hit Control V and you will get another one. And I want 4 of these, so I'm going to make 3 more. And then I'm going to move those around. Okay, so just keep playing around with your rocket until you have something that is, vaguely rocket-like. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, we will make pretty art later. Just want you to be comfortable with using the tools and moving around in the scene. Just kind of get comfortable with the user interface. Now, I want to show you another little trick. This is our rocket. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to combine all these things into one object. Because if we like to move the rocket around, moving all these individual pieces is kind of silly. But we want to make it one object, so we can just move that one thing and everything will follow. That's a concept called parenting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click here in the window, and I'm going to create an empty game object. And notice how it spawned in. It spawned in way over here. I want this to be close to my rocket, so I'm just going to get that in a little closer. In fact, actually one of the easiest ways to do this that I know of, I'm just going to do this. See how I've selected it? I'm holding my mouse left button down. I'm holding that, and I'm going to drag it to rocket part. Drop it, let go, and see how it connects to that? Then I'm going to come over here to this little gear icon, and I'm going to hit reset position. Okay. And now I'm going to left click on game object again, and I'm going to drag it away from here. Just drag it below capsule. Don't get it over it. You'll parent it. We just want to get it down here. And let's rename this rocket art. Okay. You can also do that right up here in this little box here as well. All right, and then I'm going to select everything. So rocket part, and then I'm going to hold my shift button down and grab everything below rocket part. Then I'm going to left click and drag that right over rocket art. Now when I move this object here, rocket art, everything moves with it. Our rocket is a little plain. Let's spruce it up a little bit. I want you to go over here to the project folder. Now we're going to need a new folder, so hit create and then create folder. And let's call this art. Now make another object using that create button. We want a thing called material. See this here, material? And what we're going to do, material is going to be a color for us. I like blue, so I'm going to make a blue material. You can make whatever color you want. It's not important that you do my color. Now look over here in this inspector while I've got this blue object selected. See this little white box? We want to click on that, and it brings up this color wheel. Now whatever color you're wanting to make, find that color on the color wheel, and then get your circle on there, and then close it. Okay, now I've got a blue material now. Now I want to apply that to my rocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click and drag that right into the scene. Just drag it right into the object that I want to color. Now note, if you change this blue value, it will change real time. So just realize that if you change the material, every object that currently is using that material will change automatically. Let's see, let's make another couple materials. And I would encourage you to make a few colors as well, like decorate your rocket a little bit. I'm going to make a silver color. And I'm also going to make a red. Decorate your rocket however you like. Again, it doesn't matter a whole lot. Just kind of have some fun with it. Okay, there's my rocket. And when you're done, the next thing we want to do is we want to make one more folder over here on this in the project window. So go back up to create. And let's create a folder, and let's call this prefabs. We do not want that under art, so let's just drag that. There you go. So prefabs. What is a prefab? A prefab is a object that you can basically clone right out of the project window. So we make a prefab just like this. Take your rocket art object, and let's drag that right into my misspelled prefabs folder. Prefabs. There we go. Now, if we wanted to add a lot of rockets to our scene, or to any scene, all we have to do is add them here. And then the interesting thing about rocket art is that, well, let me show you. I'm going to add just to be silly, I'm going to add an object to this. 3D object, let's add a cube to it. Okay, just put it right up there. Now watch what happens when I hit apply. Oh, hang on, let me move these rockets away. So there's the one we changed, and then there's 1, and then there's 3. Okay, so back here on this first rocket art, I'm going to hit this apply button over here. What apply does is it basically makes any changes and it applies it to this prefab object over here. So hit apply, and now every single rocket in our scene has a cube like that. Same thing works again if we were to delete that cube. Yeah, we can't delete it there in the scene. We can delete it here. So we were to delete that object. Now we'll change it just for that one, but once we hit apply, it'll update to every single prefab in the scene. In any scene, you can have multiple scenes using objects from these projects. So any change you make to a prefab over here will affect every single scene you make. So use it with caution. It's a very powerful, very useful tool, but it can also mess you up really quickly. And that is the basics of Unity. In the next tutorial, we'll do some Playmaker stuff.